Goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals, Quality Education, describes STEM and STEAM curriculum. There are currently two educational approaches to teaching children in the U.S., the STEM curriculum and the STEAM curriculum. STEM focuses on educating students in 4 specific disciplines: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. STEM incorporates these principles into a cohesive paradigm that encourages motivation, engagement, and employs real-world applications. STEAM adds the arts to education and uses the 5 points to guide student inquiry, dialogue, and critical thinking. STEM supporters believe that curriculum naturally involves the arts. Examples include product design and the communication skills needed for language arts. STEAM supporters say incorporating the arts into the other disciplines devalues arts' importance. These two forms of teaching are not too different from each other. Exploring opportunities where art naturally fits into the STEM narrative can help create a healthy balance. Treating art as an applied subject, such as math and science, will give students a new discipline to learn that can also be applied to real-world situations. Design classes can help students learn how to create logos and organize information into presentations. Performing arts, like drama and speech, can help translate into technical writing and persuasive writing skills, which are abilities used in technology-driven and marketing career fields. Creative planning calls for students to use the right side of their brain to think outside of the box, which can come in handy when needing to create content and innovative thinking. Science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics are all important factors that make up the curriculum. Being able to learn about all of them will lead to well-rounded and versatile professionals.
I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker for today, who, of course, most of us know the person, who is Dr. Richard Elelman. So just a quick background about Dr. Richard Elelman. Having completed time in the world of education, Dr. Richard Elelman is a freelance journalist. He also he majors in theater, political analysis, and environmental and cultural politics. Dr. Richard Elelman is now head of politics of EURECAT of Catalonia, and works to create bridges between the world of research and innovation and political institutions such as the European Union, the United Nations, the OECD, and the UFM. He is the leader of the WWQA Social Engagement Program and co-leader of the Renaissance approach to science, culture, sustainability, diplomacy. So today he will be taking us through, he's talking to us about building bridges to a sustainable future. So without further ado, I would like us to please welcome together with me, Dr. Richard Elelman.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on where you are, and good evening if you're on the other side of the planet. It's very nice to have been invited to be the keynote speaker here. And we're talking about building bridges. So maybe the first thing that we should do is understand why we need to build bridges. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of supranational agencies such as the United Nations, such as the World Bank, the OECD, the World Economic Forum, the European Commission. They create large scale strategies. They determine goals, such as, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, but they fail to actually deliver on these ambitions. And what we need to do is to discover means of converting supranational strategy into tangible effect on the ground. And one of the great problems, of course, is a political problem, and I'm a political scientist. And the political problem is that, first of all, within organizations such as the United Nations themselves, there is a lot of interagency rivalry. Far too often, people are more concerned about their personal position within an organization rather than actually getting on and doing the work for which the general public are paying them to do. Very often as well, we have diplomatic problems between different regions and between different countries. And all of this results in a situation where we do not advance. There has been a report that has come out in the last few days, which has stated very clearly that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which were originally envisaged to have been achieved by 2030, well, we're in 2024, coming towards the end of 2024, and we've only achieved 17% of those SDGs. So basically, as an international community, we are failing. So why are we failing? Well, basically because we're not working with the local communities. And that is something which I have been stressing for a long time now, and also trying to prove that these are solutions that can work at any level. So therefore, we have created what we call local climate forums, and I will be discussing that a little bit further on. Another problem is the academic sector. And I know a lot of you work for the academic sector, so I hope you get really offended by what I'm going to say to you now, because basically the academic sector also has a lot of guilt to answer. First of all, funded projects tend to parachute into local communities, and they claim that they are involved in citizen engagement. But what they're not doing really is talking to the people. What they're doing is that they're going in there, they're ticking boxes, they may hold a couple of local conferences, or they may hold a couple of workshops, and then they claim that they have engaged with local society. And they haven't done anything of the kind. They have just engaged with a very few people. They do their practical or technical experiments, and then they disappear from that community, really with the community itself having been none the wiser for whatever happened at all. So the problem has been that the academic community is not very good at communication. In fact, the academic community is awful at communication. Scientists and technologists do not like talking to each other. They do not like sharing their knowledge, and they certainly are not aware of the real life problems which their knowledge could be so useful to. With regards to the social political challenges of climate change, and how climate change affects a number of different specific areas. First of all, the effects of climate change on health, the effects of climate change on migration, the effects of climate change on a rising gender inequality, and also how climate change is exacerbating the effects, both social, political, and human, of conflicts, armed conflicts around the world. So what we have done is that we have started deciding, first of all, okay, as outsiders, and as you can see that I'm a European, we cannot go into communities around the world, parachute in and tell those people what they are supposed to do. It's quite the opposite. We have to communicate and contact and work with existing socially motivated groups that are from those local communities, because then they are the people who are not only trying to find solutions, but they are the people who are already suffering the effects of the supranational failure to address climate change issues and those issues which I've already mentioned before. So it is absolutely essential for us that we can work with and support people who are actually suffering these problems. And when we talk about citizen engagement, a lot of people don't understand what I mean by citizen engagement. So let me define what I believe citizen engagement is. Citizen engagement is when those people who are suffering those effects take the initiative, they lead the co-design and the co-identification of the problems, they lead the co-design of the solutions, they become the overseers of those solutions, be they technical, social, or political, and they become the leading element within what we call the quintuple helix. So what we need to do is that when we work with local society, is that we need to be able to talk to all of the sectors. Obviously, we need to talk to the political sector at a local level, but they do not become the leaders. It has to be the ordinary citizens themselves who are motivated, who have already created social movements that are those leaders there. We don't need to create something that already exists. So we don't come in from the inside, from the outside, and say, we want you to create what we describe as local climate forums. No, what we say to organizations and to activities and programs that already exist is, we want you to be a local climate forum. We don't want you to change what you're doing. We just want you to be aware of some of the issues that we're looking at, and tell us how we can help you. So that is our purpose. We don't want to reinvent the egg. We don't want to impose anything. Quite the opposite. We want to be a conduit, a means that local community actions can disseminate what they are doing and what the challenges are that they are facing to the international community. So an example for the United Nations in Nairobi, what I did, excuse me, was I was introduced through an administrator of mine called Anam Saliani to the problems in Kibera. I mean, I knew about Kibera. I've worked in Africa before. I've worked in a refugee camp in the Sudan for 2 years, many years ago when I was a lot younger. So I am aware of problems in Africa. But what they showed me there was, first of all, their work with children, both boys and girls. And then at the same time as well, they demonstrated to me the problems of the Nairobi River, which you can now see on that slide there. That is the Nairobi River. And that's not just the river bank. That is the Nairobi River with a little bit of water running through. And it is full of rubbish. And it is a major source of health issues, because that is the source of their drinking water. That is where they wash their clothes, and that is where they wash themselves. So, as I said before, I'm using this as an example. We spoke to the people of the Watutu Library, especially Brandon Okoth, the leader, and we said, look, we love the work that you're doing. We want to support the work that you are doing by dissemination, by putting you in contact with people who perhaps can broaden the scope of your work. But we would ask you to also look at the question of the river itself. And we did this both in Kibera and also in Korogocho, which is another which is another district of Nairobi. And Kibera, for those who don't know, but I'm sure that everyone here does know, that Kibera is actually the largest slum in Africa. So we thought, if we can make this work in Kibera, then we can make this work basically in anywhere. We can make this work in the large slums such as Mumbai or Mexico City, and we can make this work as well in small local rural areas. So Kibera was really our first pilot site, as it were. And what they did is that they organized themselves, and they organized themselves through the families and the relations of the children who were attending this school, which is totally free and gives education to very small children who otherwise would not be able to attend school. And the payment is from the parents is that they help to clean up the river Nairobi. And that's what we have been doing. Now then, both in Kibera and Korogocho, we've also come across a number of other issues. And if we can go to the next slide, one of the issues that we discovered was the fact that we were finding a lot of babies who were dead in the river Nairobi. And they were either babies that had obviously been aborted, or if not, they were babies that had died after birth. And one of the things that we discovered looking into this issue is the fact that there is also the issue of sexploitation, so that women are being forced to give sex in order to have access to clean water. Now then, this is not something which is only happening in Kenya. This is something that is happening across Africa and also Asia, and indeed also South America. Okay, it is documented, but what we wanted to do was that we wanted to relate how climate change was extenuating these circumstances. And in areas of drought or in areas of extreme flooding, such as, for example, Bangladesh, or such as, for example, Chad or Mali, what we were discovering is that women are being basically forced to have sex in exchange for a small amount of drinking water. This is something that we brought to the attention of the United Nations Women. And I am very disappointed to say that United Nations Women did not react. That picture is a picture that I took in Kibera, which shows quite obviously that this sign is one of a number of signs around Korogocho district of Nairobi. And they're saying, don't throw away your baby, because of number of bodies that are being found in the river and in the suburbs themselves. And UN Women, when we went to them with a report, they said that they weren't aware of that. Just to give you an idea, those of you who are in Nairobi will know this, but those of you who aren't, the United Nations complex is approximately 15 minutes from this district. There is no way that if you live in Nairobi, you do not know about this. And if you claim that you don't, then, in my opinion, you are either in the wrong job, or you are basically politically ignorant, or indeed even worse, you are politically corrupt. So these are the sort of issues that we have been discovering just through 2 local climate forums. But the purpose of the local climate forums, as I said before, is to identify how existing social activities, environmental activities, or technical activities that have been created by those local people themselves, how they can also address one or more of the issues that we're looking at, which I repeat once again is a question of health, migration, gender inequality, or the effects of conflict related to climate change. And as a result, we have a number of pilot sites. Indeed, in fact, one that is being very much coordinated by the Green Institute and Adeniki is serving as an example from Nigeria. We have other contacts in Nigeria. We're also working in Somalia. We're also working in the Sudan. We're working in the West Bank of Palestine, and we're also working in other European countries. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the real to the real source of the problem and make those people who are facing those challenges the leaders in finding the solutions. So the rest of the quintuple helix is there as a support. So it is public government, but it's also the private sector. It's also our sector, the research sector, the technological sector. And that is where we have the idea of science embassies. Science embassies have a number of purposes. They must, first of all, lead the social and political debate. They have an obligation to become active social political actors because we can talk from a neutral standpoint. Secondly, technological and scientific research centers have the practical knowledge which these local communities who we are working with very often need. We don't give it to them. What that we say to them is, if you have a problem, ask us. If you don't have a technical problem, don't ask us. We will still disseminate what you are doing. We will still support you to the maximum from a social and political side. But if you have a technical problem, we are the people who can help. And that is the reason why, as well, communication skills are so important, so that scientists become used to interacting with the rest of society. In order to bridge that gap, as well, we find it is absolutely essential that science learns to communicate in a clear, accessible way to all people, no matter what their level of education is, no matter what their ethnicity. It must be communicated in a clear way in the language of those people who we are trying to reach. And finally, as well, what I would say is, what type of people are we discovering are leading these local climate forums, as we call them broadly, around Africa and the Mediterranean, and where we will be then extending at the end of next year into Asia and South America. What we are discovering is something which is very important, that it is generally young people who are the leading social activists in their communities. So I'm going to say something as well, which many people don't agree with, but I don't care. And that is the fact that there shouldn't be a separation of youth from, shall we say, more elderly participants in conferences or in actions. I really hate this separation of youth, which they themselves do as well, but which also, shall we say, other members of the audiences at conferences and organizations, they always create a youth section. And I do not understand the point of that, because basically we just need everybody to work together. There is no difference between somebody who is active and they are 65 and somebody who is active and they are 25. And what we are discovering is that we don't need to attract the youth to our cause, because they are tending to be the principal leaders of these social actions. The person who I mentioned in my example of Kibera, he's 20, he's 23. So he's youth. So why would I need to create a youth section in order to bring someone in like Brandon, when Brandon should be interacting, and is indeed interacting, with everybody of all ages from all of those sectors that I've mentioned of the quintuple helix: the public, the private, the research, the cultural sector, which is the only way that we can clearly communicate with everybody. And then finally, as well, obviously the most important, the citizens themselves, the citizens who are having to live with the consequences of those problems. If we can show the next picture, you will see that, and as you will see again, young people are, that is the same, exactly the same place where I took that first picture. And this is a picture which I took last October in that same area. And you can see how the river is becoming a river again. But more importantly, it's creating a community. It's creating a sense of engagement. It's creating a sense of ownership. And most importantly of all, it's telling these people, you can not only take steps to improve your living standards where you are and resist the effects of climate change, but you are the leaders of that movement. And that is the most important point of all. They are the leaders. We who are coming from, for example, the research sector, we are people there to support those local leaders. We are not there to tell them what to do because we don't live in those areas. We have no idea. I hope that anybody who's interested in what I've said will look at a website called Cassandra 2023. You can also contact me. We are looking to establish local climate forums, i.e. existing projects which we can support and disseminate to a supranational audience from around the world. So please contact us. And I wish that everybody will learn some basic lessons that don't separate youth. Remember that technologists and scientists have a social political role. Make sure that we can communicate knowledge through local cultural factors so that it can be understood. And above all, let us together overcome the social political effects of climate change. It's not just environmental. Health, migration, gender inequality, and the effects of armed conflicts are not environmental factors. They are human, political, and social factors, and we have an obligation to face those front on. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Elelman. You've given us a lot of things to think about right now. I don't know if we have any questions from the audience. So while we wait for questions from the audience, I know you've spoken about like different stakeholders that are probably important to solve the environmental crisis of climate change right now. So you made mention of academia, you made mention of research scientists, and I felt attacked anyways. I already mentioned when you said that researchers are always kind of reluctant to communicate the findings to the community. Practically speaking, they do not probably engage that much with the community.
My major problems is, sorry to interrupt you. I mean, for example, I've been, as you said in the presentation, I've been a journalist, I've been an actor, I'm a political scientist, I'm a doctor in political science, and I've been a politician as well. And for the last 13 years, I've been the head of politics of the Catalan Technology Center, EURECAT. And I'm very proud of the work that EURECAT do. But what we do find around the world, and I've worked with the United Nations and I've worked with the European Commission, what we find is that scientists, the only way they like to communicate is in peer-reviewed articles in established journals, because the only thing that they're really bothered about is to receive the applause from their academic peers. And one of the things that I'm worried about is that there's far too much public money going into funded projects. Billions are being spent on funded projects, and the results of those, they don't appear practically in any of these local communities which I'm referring to. What they're converted into a peer-reviewed article so that somebody can then go to ResearchGate and say, oh, look, I've got a really high research index. Aren't I clever? I'll keep my job as a result. It's the world at the reverse. It's a disgusting situation. And what we have got to do, and what EURECAT have recognized from the very start, and I applaud that, they employed me as a political scientist, which is rare in itself, is the fact that what we need to do is we need to get the science onto the streets. We need to get the knowledge there, but only when it's asked for. So the local communities, they know the problems they're facing. I'm not going to go, for example, into Afghanistan, where I've also been working. And I'm not going to go into Afghanistan and say, oh, you've got a problem, and the problem is that they know what problems they've got because they're the people who have to live there. What I need to do is to go there and say to them, what do you need? And then when they tell me, I need to be able to explain to them in a simple language that I can understand, because I'm not a natural scientist, I'm a political scientist. I need to be able to explain to them in their own language exactly what the technical solution are and what the technical alternatives are. That is what scientists should be doing. That's what technologists should be doing, instead of trying to gain points and promotion through peer-reviewed articles.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elelman. It was really, really nice to hear all this information from you right now. So I'd probably say one of the take-home things to do right now is to improve or to increase the public engagement of scientists, because it's very important to inform the community of findings in practical terms, not using the technical terms in this case. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And not just scientists, but also the supranational institutions. Last year, I was working for a year at the United Nations in Nairobi, and I was disgusted by the lack of social awareness of the people who are supposed to be responsible for finding problems precisely to those crises.
So thank you very much, the keynote speaker. So I don't know if you can just give a round of applause to our keynote speaker for today, for the thought-provoking talk. It was very nice.
And thank you very much to you and to Adeniki as well for inviting me to be here. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.